Do you have a daughter? The little girl asked me that before the plane even reached cruising altitude, and somehow those 6 words would change everything I thought I knew about my past. I remember looking at her across the narrow space between our seats, wondering why a 7-year-old would ask a stranger something so personal. Her voice was soft, curious, completely unafraid. I was 36 years old, and people rarely asked me questions like that. They usually knew better. My name was Adrian Callahan. In certain rooms, that name opened doors. In others, it made conversations stop. But that afternoon, at 30,000 feet above the East Coast, none of that seemed to matter. I had boarded the flight from New York to Boston, hoping for 2 quiet hours. My phone was already on silent. My jacket was folded beside me. I had no intention of speaking to anyone. Then she climbed into the window seat beside mine, hugging a small pink backpack against her chest. "Excuse me," she said. I moved my coat so she could sit comfortably. "Thank you." She buckled her seat belt, looked out at the runway, then glanced back at me. That was when she asked it. "Do you have a daughter?" I stared at her. "Why would you ask me that?" She shrugged. "You look like somebody who misses one." I almost smiled. Almost. Instead, I looked toward the window. 7 years ago, I had lost someone I had never even gotten the chance to know. At least, that was what I had been told. Emily had disappeared before I could understand what was happening. No explanation. No goodbye that made sense. And after everything went quiet, there had been no trace of her. I spent years searching until searching became something I did silently. Something I carried without admitting it. "No," I finally said. "I don't have a daughter." The little girl studied my face for a few seconds. Then she nodded as if she didn't believe me. "My mom says mine looks like you." My breath caught. "Your dad?" I asked. She shook her head. "My mom." Then she smiled. "She says my eyes are his." I looked at her properly for the first time. She had light brown hair tucked behind one ear. Pale skin. A tiny dimple appeared beside her cheek when she smiled. But it was her eyes that made something cold move through me. Gray-blue. Familiar. Impossible. I told myself it was coincidence. The human mind finds patterns where there are none. That was what I believed until she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small silver bracelet. My eyes locked onto the tiny symbol engraved on its surface. An anchor. My fingers went still. I knew that symbol. I had chosen it myself, years ago, for the only woman I had ever loved. Emily. The cabin noise seemed to fade around me. The engines became distant. Even the little girl stopped smiling. She looked down at the bracelet, then back at me. "Mom says I shouldn't show this to strangers." I swallowed. "What's your name?" She answered without hesitation. "Lily." Then, with the innocence of a child who had no idea she was opening a door that had been locked for 7 years, she added, "Lily Carter." Carter. I couldn't breathe. Emily's last name before she became Emily Callahan. Before she vanished. Before she took a part of my life with her. I looked at Lily again, and for the first time in 7 years, I allowed myself to wonder the question I had been too afraid to ask. What if I had never lost my daughter? What if she had been alive all along? The bracelet was still between us when Lily suddenly whispered, "My mom says I should never give this to anyone." I stared at the small silver anchor resting in her palm, trying to understand how something so tiny could make 7 years of silence feel like a door opening in front of me. I reached toward it, then stopped. "Where did you get that?" I asked. Lily looked at me carefully. "My mom gave it to me." Her fingers closed around the bracelet. "She said it belonged to my father." My chest tightened. I had given that bracelet to Emily on a cold November evening, years ago, when we were still young enough to believe love could protect us from everything. The anchor had been my idea. Emily had laughed when she saw it. She said it was strange. I told her that was the point. "You always need something to hold on to," I had said. She wore it every day after that, until she disappeared. I looked at Lily again. "Does your mother still have one?" She nodded. "She has another one." My pulse quickened. There were things I could explain away. A similar bracelet. Similar eyes. A familiar smile. But not this. Not the exact symbol I had chosen for Emily. "What is your mother's name?" I asked, already knowing I was afraid of the answer. Lily glanced toward the aisle before leaning closer. "Emily." One word. That was all it took. I looked away and pressed my fingers against the armrest. The cabin suddenly felt too warm. 7 years ago, Emily had vanished from my life without an explanation. I had searched every place I could think of. I had called every person who might have known something. Nothing. Eventually, I was given one conclusion to live with. She was gone. I never accepted it completely, but I learned how to bury the questions. I learned how to build a life around an empty space. And now a little girl sitting beside me had just spoken her name. "What is your mother's last name?" I asked. Lily frowned. "Carter." My heart seemed to stop. Carter. Emily Carter. The name I had written on hundreds of documents before we married. The name that had disappeared from my world the night she left. I looked at Lily's face again. This time, I was not looking at a stranger. I was searching for Emily. The shape of her eyes. The slight tilt of her head. The way she pressed her lips together when she was thinking. I remembered every one of those details. "Why are you going to Boston?" I asked. "We are visiting someone." "Who?" Lily smiled. "Grandma." Then she paused. "My mom does not like talking about my dad." I swallowed. "What does she say?" Lily looked down at her bracelet. "She says he was a good man." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. I had spent 7 years wondering what Emily told people about me. I never imagined she had told our child that I was good. Our child. The thought came so suddenly that I almost rejected it. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Something that could silence the part of me still begging for a reasonable explanation. Then Lily reached into her backpack again. "I have a picture," she said. She pulled out a small photograph. With worn edges. I took it carefully. The first thing I saw was Emily. Older, but unmistakably her. Her hair was longer. Her face was softer. She was smiling at the camera. And in her arms was a newborn baby wrapped in a pale pink blanket. My eyes moved to the date printed in the corner. 7 years ago. The photograph slipped slightly between my fingers. Then I saw the hospital bracelet around the baby's wrist. My name was written on it. The photograph stayed in my hand, but I could not make myself look away from the bracelet around the baby's wrist. My name was there. Adrian Callahan. Not similar. Not close. Mine. For several seconds, I forgot I was sitting on an airplane. I forgot the quiet conversations around us, the hum of the engines, even the fact that Lily was watching me. All I could see was that tiny bracelet and the date beside it. 7 years ago, the exact week Emily disappeared. I had spent years believing I had lost her before I ever knew what had happened. Now I was looking at a picture that suggested something completely different. "Where did you get this?" My voice sounded unfamiliar even to me. Lily reached for the photograph, but I held it gently. "My mom keeps it in a box," she said. "She only lets me see it sometimes." I looked at the baby in Emily's arms. The child was wrapped in pink, her tiny face barely visible beneath the blanket. But there was something about that little face that made my heart pound. The shape of the cheeks. The small crease between the eyebrows. I had seen those features before. In the mirror. "Does your mother know you brought this?" I asked. Lily shook her head. "I brought it because Grandma said I should keep it safe." I looked at her. "Why?" She shrugged. "She says some things are important even when nobody talks about them." That sentence stayed with me. Nobody talks about them. I looked back at the photograph. Emily had always been private, but she had never been afraid of the truth. Not with me. At least, that was what I had believed. "Lily," I said carefully, "what does your mother call the baby in this picture?" Lily smiled. "Me." My fingers tightened around the edge of the photograph. "You?" She nodded. "That is me when I was little." The world seemed to tilt. I looked at her again, this time with a question I could no longer keep inside. "When were you born?" She answered immediately. "October 14th. My stomach dropped. October 14th. The date I had memorized years ago because it was supposed to be the day Emily and I celebrated something we never got the chance to celebrate. I remembered the phone call, the confusion, the silence afterward. I remembered being told Emily had left because she wanted a different life. I remembered believing that somehow I had failed her. But if Lily was born on October 14th, then the timeline was no longer a mystery. It was a truth I had never been allowed to see. "Who told you about your father?" I asked. Lily looked toward the window. Clouds stretched beneath us like a wide ocean. "Mom." "What did she say?" Lily thought for a moment. "She said he had gray eyes." I felt my throat tighten. "Anything else?" "She said he used to make her laugh when she was sad." I closed my eyes for 1 second. Emily had once told me that I was the only person who could make her laugh when she wanted to cry. That memory had stayed buried for years. Now it was sitting beside me in a 7-year-old girl. Lily suddenly touched my sleeve. "Are you okay?" I opened my eyes. For the first time in 7 years, I was afraid of the answer to a question I had spent my life avoiding. I looked at her and whispered, I think I might know your father. Lily's eyes widened. You do? I nodded slowly. Then she asked the question that made my entire world stop. Is his name Adrian? The question landed harder than anything I could have imagined. Is his name Adrian? I stared at Lily, unable to answer. She was not guessing. She was not asking because she had seen my name on a document. She was asking because someone had already told her. Who told you my name? I whispered. Lily looked down at the photograph in my hand. Mom did. My heart began pounding again. Sometimes, she said. When I ask about him. I looked toward the aisle, suddenly aware of every sound around me. The flight attendant was moving through the cabin. A man was reading a newspaper across the aisle. Somewhere behind us, a child was laughing. Everything looked completely normal. My world was not. What exactly did your mother tell you? I asked. Lily thought carefully. She said his name was Adrian Callahan. I closed my eyes. There it was. The name I had spent 7 years trying to forget. The name Emily had apparently never forgotten. I opened my eyes and looked at Lily. Did she ever show you a picture of him? Lily nodded. Yes. She reached into her backpack again, but this time she stopped. I am not supposed to show strangers. I almost smiled. That is probably a good rule. She smiled too. Then she studied my face. You look nervous. I let out a quiet breath. I am. Why? I looked at the photograph. Because I think I know your mother. Lily's expression changed. You do? I knew her a long time ago. Before I was born. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, did you love her? The question was so simple that it hurt. I looked toward the window. The clouds below us were bright under the afternoon sun. I remembered Emily standing beside a kitchen window, laughing because I had burned dinner. I remembered the way she used to leave notes beside my coffee. I remembered the last morning I saw her, when I had no idea it would become the last. Yes, I said. I loved her very much. Lily smiled faintly. She loved you too. My eyes returned to her. What, Mom? Lily hugged her backpack tighter. She does not talk about you very much. But when she does, she smiles. 7 years disappeared in that sentence. I wanted to ask 100 questions. Where had Emily been? Why had she left? Why had she never contacted me? Why had she allowed me to believe she was gone? But there was one question that mattered more than all the others. Lily, I said gently, why are you going to Boston? Her smile faded. Mom has to meet someone. Who? I do not know. She looked at me for a moment. But she said we have to be careful. Something in her voice made me sit straighter. Did she say why? Lily shook her head. Only that some people should never know where we are. I looked at the photograph. Again, Emily's face stared back at me from 7 years earlier, holding the child I had never known existed. Then I looked at Lily. Suddenly, the bracelet made sense. The photograph made sense. The dates made sense. But one mystery remained. Why had Emily hidden our daughter from me for 7 years? The answer was waiting somewhere in Boston. And for the first time in my life, I was not afraid of what I might find. I was afraid of what I might lose if I arrived too late. The moment the plane touched down in Boston, I realized I had spent the last 2 hours asking the wrong question. I had been trying to prove that Lily was my daughter. But the photographs, the bracelet, the dates, and the way she knew my name had already answered that. The question I should have been asking was why Emily had kept her from me. As passengers began collecting their bags, Lily stayed beside me, her small hand wrapped around the strap of her pink backpack. I watched her carefully, not because I doubted her anymore, but because every little detail seemed to connect her to a life I had never known. Are you meeting your mom at the airport? I asked. Lily nodded. She said she would be waiting near the main entrance. My stomach tightened. Emily was here. After 7 years, she was somewhere inside this airport. I had imagined this moment more times than I could count, but never like this. Never with a little girl standing beside me, who carried her smile and my questions. We walked through the terminal together. The afternoon crowd moved around us, rolling suitcases clicking over the polished floor, announcements echoing from the ceiling. Then Lily suddenly stopped. There. She pointed toward the glass doors. I followed her gaze. A woman stood near the entrance, holding a small paper coffee cup. Her hair was longer than I remembered. Her face had changed in the quiet ways that time changes everyone. But I knew her immediately. Emily. My feet stopped moving. She looked up. Our eyes met through the crowd. The coffee cup slipped slightly in her hand. For several seconds, neither of us moved. 7 years disappeared. I remembered her laugh. Her voice. The way she used to look at me when she thought I was not paying attention. Then her eyes moved past me and landed on Lily. Her expression softened. Mom! Lily ran toward her. Emily dropped to one knee and wrapped her arms around her daughter. I stood several feet away, watching them, feeling like I had walked into a chapter of my own life that someone else had written without me. Lily turned around and smiled. Mom, this is Adrian. Emily went completely still. She looked at me again. There was no anger in her face. No surprise either. Only fear. A quiet, unmistakable fear that made me understand something immediately. She had not expected to see me. You were not supposed to be on this flight, she whispered. I took one step closer. Neither were you supposed to disappear. Her eyes lowered. Adrian, please. 7 years, Emily. My voice remained calm, but every word carried the weight of everything I had never said. 7 years without a single explanation. She looked at Lily, then back at me. I was trying to protect her. I glanced at our daughter. From what? Emily did not answer. A few seconds passed. Then she looked over her shoulder toward the airport doors. Her hand tightened around Lily's. We need to leave. Why? I asked. Because if you found us, they could too. I felt a chill move through me. Who? Emily looked directly into my eyes. The people who wanted you to lose everything. I stared at her, trying to understand. She had not abandoned me because she stopped caring. She had not vanished because she wanted another life. She had been hiding, and she had been hiding our daughter with her. Lily looked between us, confused. Mom. Emily forced a small smile. It is okay, sweetheart. But her voice was trembling. Then she looked at me and whispered the words I had waited 7 years to hear. I never stopped loving you. I just believed staying away was the only way to keep our daughter safe. I never stopped loving you. I just believed staying away was the only way to keep our daughter safe. Emily's words followed me as we left the airport, but they did not answer the question burning inside me. They only made it larger. We walked through the parking garage toward a silver sedan parked beneath the fluorescent lights. Lily held Emily's hand on one side and looked back at me every few seconds. I followed them, still trying to understand how the woman I had spent 7 years mourning had been living less than 5 hours away. Where have you been? I finally asked. Emily stopped beside the car. She looked at Lily, then at me. Not here. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you right now. I felt frustration rising, but then I noticed Lily watching us. She did not need to carry the weight of our past. I took a breath and lowered my voice. I am not asking you to explain everything in front of her. Emily's expression changed slightly. For the first time since we had seen each other, I saw a trace of the woman I remembered. You still do that, she said. Do what? Think about everyone else before yourself. I almost laughed. You disappeared for 7 years, Emily. I had a lot of time to think. She looked away. I know. Lily climbed into the back seat and buckled herself in. Are you two friends? She asked. Emily glanced at me. I answered before she could. We used to be. Lily smiled. Maybe you can be friends again. The innocence in her voice nearly broke me. Emily closed the driver's door, but did not start the car. There is something you need to know, she said. I waited. The reason I left was not because of you. I said nothing. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to tell you. I wanted us to be a family. But people around you were watching everything. Every move. Every person you cared about. She paused. I realized that if they knew about Lily, she would become a way to reach you. I looked through the rear window at our daughter. She was staring out at the passing lights. So you decided I should never know she existed? I decided that you should have the chance to live. Her voice cracked slightly, and I wanted her to have a normal childhood. I looked at Emily. You could have trusted me. I did trust you. She swallowed. That was the problem. I knew you would come looking. Silence filled the car. Then Lily turned around. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. Can Adrian come with us? Emily looked at me. I expected hesitation. Instead, she quietly nodded. Yes. The car moved out of the garage and into the Boston evening. Streetlights passed across Lily's face in warm flashes of gold. I watched her through the rearview mirror and felt something inside me shift. For years, I had believed my greatest loss was Emily. I had been wrong. I had lost 7 years with a daughter who had been alive all along. Then my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. One message. No name. Just 5 words. We know where she is. I looked at Emily. She saw my expression and immediately understood. Her face went pale. Lily was still smiling in the back seat, unaware that the quiet life Emily had built for 7 years had just begun to change. The message on my phone stayed on the screen as the car moved through the Boston streets. We know where she is. 5 words. No explanation. No name. Just enough to tell me that the past had found us again. Emily glanced at the screen, then looked at Lily in the rearview mirror. She does not know, Emily whispered. Do not tell her. I nodded. Where are we going? My apartment. No, Emily looked at me. No. If someone found you this quickly, we should not go somewhere you have lived for years. She stared at me for a moment, then slowly nodded. You still think 3 steps ahead. I had to. I looked out the window. You taught me that. The car became quiet. A few minutes later, we pulled into a small hotel near the waterfront. It was not luxurious. It was quiet. Anonymous. The kind of place where nobody cared who walked through the lobby. Lily looked around as we entered. Are we staying here? She asked. Emily smiled. Just for tonight. I watched Lily walk toward the elevator, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulder. 7 years. 7 years of birthdays I had missed. First days of school. Lost teeth. Christmas mornings. Every ordinary moment that a father was supposed to know. I felt the weight of those missing years settle inside me. I am sorry, Emily said quietly. I turned toward her. For what? For all of it. She looked down at her hands. I thought I was protecting her. But I know what I took from you. I wanted to be angry. Maybe I had every reason to be. But then I heard Lily laughing from the elevator, and the anger became something else. Grief. I cannot get those years back, I said. No, Emily whispered. But you can have the years ahead. The elevator doors opened. Lily waved at us. Come on. I smiled despite myself. We followed her upstairs. Inside the room, Lily immediately placed her backpack on the bed and pulled out the photograph again. This is my favorite, she said. I looked at it. Emily was holding baby Lily, smiling at the camera. I had never seen the picture before. Why? I asked. Lily pointed to Emily. Because Mom looks happy. Emily looked away. I noticed the sadness in her expression. You were happy, I said. She looked at me. For a little while. Then her phone rang. She froze. She looked at the screen and did not answer. It rang again, then stopped. A message appeared. Emily read it, and all the color seemed to leave her face. What does it say? I asked. She hesitated before handing me the phone. The message was short. You cannot hide her forever. I looked at Lily, who was sitting on the edge of the bed, completely unaware of the conversation. I handed the phone back. Emily, we need to talk about everything. Tonight. She nodded. You deserve the truth. We sat across from each other while Lily drew quietly at the small table by the window. Emily took a slow breath. 7 years ago, I did not leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I discovered that someone close to you was sharing information about your life. I did not know who I could trust. I listened carefully, and you thought disappearing would solve it. I thought disappearing would give Lily a chance to grow up without being part of your world. She looked toward our daughter. I wanted her to be a child, not a secret, not a bargaining piece, just a child. Her words stayed with me. Then she told me the one thing I had never expected. The person who helped me disappear is the same person who has been looking for us. I stared at her. Who? Emily looked at me, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Your older brother. Your older brother. The words seemed to hang in the room long after Emily stopped speaking. I looked at her, waiting for the rest of the sentence, but she said nothing. Daniel? I asked. She nodded. Daniel Callahan. My older brother. The person I had trusted with more than anyone. For years, he had been the one person in my family who never questioned my decisions. He had stood beside me through every difficult season of my life. And according to Emily, he had also been the person who helped her disappear. How? I asked. Emily folded her hands together. After I found out I was pregnant, Daniel came to see me. He told me there were people watching you. He said they knew about me. He knew about the baby. I looked toward Lily. She was still drawing, quietly humming to herself. What did he tell you? He told me that if I stayed with you, Lily would never have a normal life. Emily's voice became softer. He said there was only one way to keep her safe. He could make it look like I had left the country. I stared at the floor. And you believed him. I had no reason not to. She looked at me. You were always surrounded by people I did not understand. I knew your world was complicated. I knew you had enemies. When Daniel showed me documents and messages, I thought he was helping me. I felt something inside me shift. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Confusion. Why would he help you disappear if he was trying to protect us? Emily looked away. Because he said he was protecting you too. I remember Daniel standing in my office years ago, telling me that Emily had chosen to leave. He had been the one who convinced me not to keep searching. He had been the one who told me she wanted a fresh start. Every memory suddenly looked different. Did he ever contact you after you left? I asked. Once. When? About 6 months after Lily was born. Emily hesitated. He asked if you had found us. I closed my eyes. That meant Daniel had known. All these years, he had known that my daughter was alive. I looked at Lily again. She was drawing a family with 3 figures. A woman, a little girl, and a tall man standing beside them. Is that us? I asked. Lily looked up and smiled. Yes. She pointed at the tall figure. That is Daddy. My heart tightened. I looked at Emily. She had tears in her eyes. I never told her your name, she whispered. But she always drew you. I walked over and knelt beside Lily. You drew this before today? A lot of times. She held up the picture. Mom said maybe someday I would meet him. I looked at the little drawing. 3 people standing beneath a yellow sun. It was simple, innocent. Everything I had wanted without knowing I was missing it. Then my phone vibrated again. This time, there was no message. It was an incoming call. The name on the screen was Daniel. I looked at Emily. She immediately shook her head. Do not answer. I stared at the phone as it continued ringing. For 7 years, Daniel had been the person I trusted most. Now he was the person standing between me and the truth. I finally silenced the call. Lily looked up. Who was that? I looked at my daughter and realized I had already made my choice. Someone from my past, I said. But he is not going to decide our future. Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since we met again, she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Adrian, she whispered, what are you going to do? I looked toward the window. Boston glittered beneath the night sky. 7 years had been stolen from us. I could not change yesterday, but I could make sure tomorrow belonged to Lily. Daddy. Lily's voice was quiet, almost uncertain, and somehow that one word mattered more than everything I had spent the last 7 years building. I looked at her across the small hotel room and felt the weight of the life I had missed. She was still holding her drawing, the 3 of us beneath a yellow sun, as if she had already imagined a family I had never known existed. I walked over and sat beside her. You can call me Adrian, I said softly. Lily studied my face. But are you really my father? There was no way to hide from that question. No business deal, no title, no reputation could answer it for me. I nodded. Yes, I believe I am. She smiled slowly. Mom said I would know when I met you. I looked toward Emily. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. She was right. For a moment, the room became quiet. Then Lily reached for my hand. Her fingers were small and warm. I held them carefully, afraid that even one careless movement might make this moment disappear. I am sorry I was not there, I whispered. Lily looked at me. You did not know. That answer broke something open inside me. A child should not have to understand forgiveness before she understands why her father was missing. Yet Lily did. She simply accepted the truth in front of her. Emily sat across from us, watching quietly. I never wanted her to think you abandoned her, she said. I told her you did not know. I looked at Emily. You protected my name. I protected her heart. I nodded. For the first time, I understood that love had been present in this story even when I could not see it. It had simply been buried beneath fear, distance, and years of silence. My phone remained on the table. Daniel's unanswered call was still in my mind, but it no longer controlled me. I had spent years believing power meant controlling every outcome. Now I understood something different. Power was being able to choose what mattered when everything else demanded your attention. I looked at Lily. What do you want to do tomorrow? She thought for a moment. Can we have breakfast together? I smiled. Of course. Pancakes. Definitely. She laughed. Emily laughed too. The sound stopped me. It was the same laugh I remembered from 7 years ago, softer now, but still hers. The next morning, we sat in a small Boston diner near the waterfront. Lily poured syrup over her pancakes while Emily drank coffee and watched us. I listened to Lily talk about school, her favorite books, and the science projects she wanted to finish when she got home. Ordinary things. Beautiful things. Things I had missed because I never knew they were mine. At one point, Lily looked at me and said, "You have my eyes." I smiled. No, you have mine. Emily looked between us, and for a moment, none of us needed to explain what we were becoming. A family was not restored in one morning. Trust was not repaired in one conversation. 7 years could not be erased. But we had something we had not had the day before. A beginning. Later, as we walked outside, Lily took one hand in mine and one in Emily's. She looked up at both of us. Are we going home together? I looked at Emily. She nodded. I looked at Lily. Yes, I said. We are. She smiled and squeezed my hand. And as we walked beneath the morning sunlight, I finally understood the truth I had been too proud to see for years. I had spent 7 years ruling a world that never filled the empty space inside me. Then a little girl sat beside me on a plane, looked into my eyes, and gave me something no amount of power could ever buy. A second chance to be her father.